All right. Thank you all again for joining me today. So today we're going to be talking about volunteer management software, specifically Volunteer Impact in the Enterprise Edition, which is geared towards those organizations that have multiple departments, branches, and locations. And for those who just joined, just another reminder to please mute yourself until Q&A. At the end, there will be at least 10 to 15 minutes where we'll go over any questions that you may have. And then remember that this link is being recorded too. So in the coming days, you'll receive an email with not only this recording, but other helpful links. And feel free to use the chat as well to kind of help those who just come in that this meeting is going to be recorded because understandably it's going to be a common question. And speaking of chat, let's go ahead and open up the chat and everybody say where you're from, what org you're with, so we know what kind of crowd we have today. So far, we got around 30 people. So let's see who we have. So feel free to introduce yourselves, everyone. Scottsdale, Arizona. There's a start. All right, Laura Robertson's with us, Capital Caring Health. All right. We have Minnesota. Okay, we're international now. So Sharon with in Calgary, Canada. And we've worked our way to the East Coast. Marcus from Boston. Raymond, Port Angeles, Washington State's where I reside. We're across the Atlantic Ocean, London. Oh, wait, no, London, Ontario, my bad. But we'll probably get some people in London, UK too. All right. Florida, seen a lot of Canada, New York, Illinois. We are all over. I appreciate this crowd we got here today. So I guess it's my turn. Who am I? My name's Micah. I'm the software sales advisor at Better Impact. Been with the company for a little over 4 years. And I connect with several different types of organizations that manage volunteers. They range from small nonprofits to larger scaled enterprise size that have multiple departments, locations, which is this topic is focused on today. Like I said, I live in the Pacific Northwest, the Seattle area, but I'm from the Midwest. I have Kansas City roots. I went to school at the University of Missouri with a psychology degree, and in my spare time, I love going on hikes with my wife on the weekends to explore the beautiful national forests and national parks. I'm up here, big into sports and nutrition as well. All right, so what is on the agenda today? So looks like we come from all places, as we found out from the chat. We do a whole lot of variety of different things, but we may have some common problems when it comes to managing our volunteers. So we'll dive into that and we'll explain like why the right tools for the job matter. And then this is where we'll lead into our topic of what the enterprise is. And we'll first explain the difference between the standard and enterprise. And then we'll dive into a demonstration, a high-level overview of what the Volunteer Impact Enterprise Edition is like. And then remember to stick around at the end. There'll be some helpful resources that I'll share. One will be a professional development unit, a credit for joining today's webinar. And then, of course, time for our Q&A, which we'll save at least 10 to 15 minutes for. So with that, let's get started. So what are the common, we do a lot of different things. We may be experiencing similar types of problems, which is why we're here today. So a lot of it could be we're doing a lot of data entry and we need a database to help streamline and simplify our processes. This data entry commonly can be like front-end type processes, like application intake. Maybe when a volunteer applies, they go on your website, there's an embedded form, you enter in all their responses in a database or a spreadsheet, and maybe there's another spreadsheet to calculate the hours or another tool for the scheduling, and then you're emailing them. So there's all these different disconnected tools that you're using, and it's sinking all your time away to where you're not having the time you need to effectively lead, engage, communicate with your volunteers to help enhance your program or your community. And maybe we know what the solution is, but there's steps involved. There's costs, which you may have to find the one that's affordable for your budget. And then once you do find it, now there's some possible like convincing you may have to do. You might have to get approval from leadership to sign them off on approving the purchase. And then with all of that, you still have to consider the security aspects of the software too, making sure that your volunteer data is kept confidential. And there's so much more. What we're hoping is that our Volunteer Impact Enterprise Edition could be your all-in-one solution to manage your volunteers across all of your different departments, locations, or branches in a safe and secure database. And speaking of safe and secure databases, so how does one know if a specific vendor is prioritizing like data protection? There's a simple way to tell. One is to look for an ISO certification. So ISO 27001 is the world's best known standard for information security management systems. It simply means that the vendor's respecting all of the best practices and principles enshrined in this international standard. An important distinction to note too is having the actual certificate rather than simply following the guidelines is an important distinction because it means that they're actually being audited by an independent body once a year to make sure that the standards are being met rather than just simply following them. And then this kind of leads into why the right tools for the job matter. So there was a survey released by G2, and for those who don't know what G2 is, it's a software review site where you can check out different types of softwares, what their pros and cons are. But anyways, they had a survey they released a few years ago where they asked over 2,000 some respondents on a series of questions relating to job satisfaction. And one of the questions they asked was, have you ever become dissatisfied at work due to missing or mismatched software? And in that survey, they found a little over half of all employees are unhappy at work because of the tools that they're using, which we all know if we're not equipped for the right tools for our job, it leads to unhappiness. And if we're unhappy in our role, it's not sustainable. At some point, if change doesn't occur, whether in later, we're gonna end up quitting or leaving the place, which is why it didn't surprise me at all that one of the other responses showed that about 1 in 8 of every employees has quit a job due to mismatched software. So with that, let's get you working with the tools that make you feel less frustrated and more empowered and productive when you do your job. Just another reminder to upon entry, just to be sure that you're muted. So we'll have some time for a Q&A at the end, but I appreciate those who have been muted. And yeah, so let's get into the what is the Enterprise Edition or who uses it. So there are organizations that have multiple departments, branches, or locations where volunteers are managed separately, and they only see their own specific volunteers that they manage. So common examples are cities, counties, library systems, hospitals, chapter organizations, schools, and then there's plenty more as well. This is just a short list, and this is kind of highlighting all the different kind of customers that we have that currently use Enterprise. As you can tell, we're international, just like this audience that we have here, all over different types, counties. We have arts, we have hospices, health services, like humane societies, even social services. There's several different kinds of organizations that use Enterprise. So in order to understand Enterprise, want to first explain what a standard is. So right now, see this diagram right here? So this bubble right here with two admins, with two people right here are you. They're administrators who log into the database and they see the volunteers, and that's what these profiles are here below. You log into your account and you can see your whole volunteer database. So in the standard, you can have unlimited admins, but all admins can see all volunteers. And like I said, this is most common, especially for single location organizations. But however, if we're talking about a place where there's different branches, different locations or departments where the volunteers need to be managed separately, the standard can be problematic. And one of the major challenges can be communications. So, for example, if you were to send a quick email to all of your volunteers in a standard, that message will go to all volunteers, to all departments, which can lead to miscommunication and error. And then there's other issues like one department, they can see other department volunteers that go through different processes. Then there might be information stored on their profile that they can see that you don't want them seeing because it's just unnecessary for several reasons. And now before we go to the next slide, just keep this visual, keep this diagram in mind. Just remember, this is you right here. You log into the database and you see your volunteers right here because we're about to grow and get bigger. And now we're a part of something bigger. So here we are again. Here's that same like standard diagram where here's us. We log in and we see our own volunteers. Except now, like I said, we're a part of something bigger. We're now a sub account, part of an enterprise. So now when I'm logging in, I'm only seeing my fire department volunteers. When I send an email to all of my volunteers, it's not going to those in library and parks. Those are all separated. I can't even see or access those profiles. Only those who are, or commonly those who are like enterprise administrators, they're at the top here. They can run reports across all of the different departments, communicate and access all of the different types of volunteers, and they can move them from one sub account to the other, or one department to the other. And then briefly explain this middle tier right here. This is a plus only feature called regions, where you can group sub accounts, departments together for reporting or grouping purposes, or for grouping purposes right here. And in the enterprise, just like the standard, you can have unlimited admins, except now you have the ability to customize, okay, which of my staff members do I want to place in which departments? Are they do you want them to only see one specific department like animal services? So when they have access to your database, they're only seeing animal services volunteers? Or do we want them to have access to multiple departments or even the enterprise, so then they can run reports and export or communicate information across the whole account, or move volunteer from one department to another, as it's possible for volunteers to actually be involved in multiple departments and that they can still have the same profile. So quick example, let's say there's a volunteer who's involved in museum and animal services. Museum staff, they're only going to see the museum volunteer information of that person. They're not going to know their animal services information, or if they're even involved there, and vice versa. And only enterprise admins at the top, they can see that whole, all the data relating to that volunteer and move them to one place to another. And on the volunteer side of things, they have just one login, just like for an administrator, you would always only have one login. And then one of the other benefits of the enterprise is standardization, of course, as you can create custom fields, and you can make like templates for things like activities, like training materials. So then that way you can choose to share them across the departments that can use them. And then when you run your reports, it's going to be standardized across the whole database. About to go into a demo here, but one thing I also want to explain on this diagram is that each department can have their own application form in which it has its own series of questions. And when the volunteer applies, they'll land in the respective department. And then that department admin will carry along through their processes. And then the other approach, there can be like a general application for like initial screening where you can use an additional sub account if necessary, where an enterprise admin will initially screen them. This is very common for like if there's sensitive information like fingerprinting or background checks being done first, and then you can move them to the respective sub account department for those staff to continue their onboarding journey. And I know this is a lot, of information, but just know at this time, you don't necessarily need to know at this exact moment if standard or enterprise is the best fit, because you can book a call with me at any time. So then we can assess to see which version makes the most sense. And maybe with this explanation, you may have come to realize that enterprise is not really the right version for them, and it's rather the standard. If that's you, I still highly encourage you to stick around. So then that way, you can learn about the wonderful features and benefits that volunteer impact has to offer. As a lot of the functionality I'll show in this demonstration will be available to some standard, but it has an enterprise focus on here. Just know that it's there's not one version that's better than the other. That's better than the other. It's simply a matter of which version, standard or enterprise, that best fits your needs. And with that, let's go ahead and dive into a demonstration. Okay, so right now, what I'm sharing on here is an example of what a landing page could look like as an enterprise. So you can place this link on your website, you can brand it, you can share different news, and you can allow for volunteers to search for key phrases on where they'd like to volunteer, like based on their interest, their availability, their location. You can have socials on here. And once the volunteer finds the department they want to volunteer in with either the sub tabs or searching key phrases, it can lead them into the right department that they like to apply to, in which you can set your own descriptions. It's pretty simple setting this up. You just drop in content and then you check boxes of what you want to make visible on this page. And once a volunteer is ready for the next steps and to fill an application, they'll go and fill an application, in which their first step, it's always going to be creating a My Impact page profile, which that's the volunteers portal. So that will allow them to like update their own information, schedule shifts, hours once they go through your specific processes, which after they make that account, they'll answer your specific application questions that can have different types of responses. So they can respond in like long text, they can select one item out of many, they can upload documents on that application. Once they submit it, the volunteer will be notified right away for what their next steps are. They'll receive an automated email in which it's possible for each department or location to have their own separate automated emails. We're going to have different processes, and then the right proper administrator for that account can be notified. So that's going to prompt you to sign into the back end on here, which is what I'm going to do next right here. Okay, so right now I logged in as an enterprise administrator, and this is if I had access to multiple departments, or if I were an enterprise admin, the first thing I'm going to be prompted to is which sub account I want to dive into, or if I want to look at an enterprise level, which then I'll look at an account. So we'll start at a sub account level here. So we'll dive into the museum department. And then just so you know, if I were a museum sub account administrator, or even if we're a standard edition, you wouldn't see that first screen. When you sign in, you'll just go right into your specific volunteer pool, where you're able to see a quick summary of your program. So for those who recently applied, they'll land in here as a profile as an applicant, with all of their fields from the application form automatically transferred in here for you to review, and then move them along through your specific processes, which once they're onboarding, we can move them to this in process stage. And then once they've passed all the minimum requirements and now they're an active volunteer, they'll be in the accepted stage. And then the other two statuses are active volunteers on leave for vacation or medical or other reasons are inactive. And then those who are no longer a part of the program or who are never onboarded can be archived. So then that way you have a record of them, and you can run reports and export their information out of the software if needed, or you can move them back to another stage should they return. Then to summarize the other status updates here. So these are our alerts right here. This is letting us know anything important we want to quickly drill into, like anything that's timely, for example, for expiring qualifications like a background check or a training. This is letting us know we have 11 people who have something timely that's expiring. Other things are like we can see a quick list of who's currently volunteering and clocked in using the time clock right now. Uh, and then birthdays, anniversaries. So we can be reminded of a special day for a volunteer to wish them a happy birthday or to thank them for their service and their time for being a part of the program for so many years. And any option I click on here, it's going to pull what the profiles that fall under the status on here, and then we can quickly access their information, send communications to them, view their profile. So I'm just going to go ahead and click the applicant bubble right here, but just remember any bubble or item you click, it's going to pull which profiles fall under that bucket. So here are our 7 applicants with their name. I can check one or multiple and send communications or move them to one stage to the next. Or we can review their profile. So we'll see Henry, who's our applicant. It's going to let us know what stage the volunteer's in. And remember, we're in a department right now. We're in the museum department sub-account. So I'm only seeing the museum volunteers. And so like all of Henry's information here, his contact info when he made his volunteers portal account, all carried over. Custom fields is where we find the responses to the application questions. And as you can see on here, there's many different types from drop downs to files he uploaded during the application for us to review. And for these custom fields for enterprises, it's common for all of these to be created at the enterprise level. And then those designated enterprise admins can choose and select which fields appear in which department or departments. So like, for example, this driver's license may only be necessary in so many departments. So an enterprise admin would just take a box and select, okay, which of our departments are going to capture this driver's license information. And then our qualifications here, this is where we track the steps of what volunteers need to complete right here, which kind of like custom fields, these are recommended to be made at the enterprise level. So then that way enterprise admins can plug and play which departments can use which qualifications. Just remember, they're all customizable. They start from scratch and you build them as you needed them. You place them in the appropriate departments for them to use. So then now I can move Henry along the onboarding process. If he needs to complete a background check, I can mark it as passed, set when it expires. So that way on my dashboard that I showed, I can be alerted for when it's expiring. I can send him a reminder email along with others that something's expiring, a background check. And the way how these qualifications work, they're like requirements for volunteer signup. So these are like our gatekeepers right here. So for example, in this, Henry, he's over 21. He passed his background check. He can lift over 50 pounds. He's completed his orientation. So any volunteer activities, opportunities that have these minimum requirements, it could be possible for Henry to self-schedule those specific volunteer opportunities or events based on having these specific requirements. It's a common way. It's a common way for orgs to have that set up. There's other ways. It can be done too. Like if you wanted like back end management, just know that that's possible here as well. And that's where you would go to these other tabs. Is almost anything that the volunteer can do in their journey, from self-scheduling to recording their hours, checking their schedule, that can all updating their information. It's possible for an administrator to step in and help on updating that on the back end if needed. Then everything else like general interest, general availability that you can optionally place on the application form. So you can see where Henry wants to place his time when he's available. It's possible for him in his personal portal of Henry, the volunteer, to update his interest or availability over time, and your reports on the back end will be automatically updated. And the last tab I want to show in here is note logs on here, because under each volunteer profile, there's a specific note log section where you can save any private notes that they're never going to see. And only sub-account administrators that have access to the note logs would be able to view or make edits to these. And it's also kind of handy because you can report on what keywords or phrases are entered in people's note logs. So once we review Henry's ready for the next stage, we can just simply move them to the next step in process, which there's that in process bubble where you can review their profiles. Once they complete all of your said steps, you can move them to the accepted stage. So now they're an active volunteer. And like I said, the common way that it's set up is once a volunteer is active, they can sign up and self-schedule for volunteer opportunities that they have the requirements for. It doesn't necessarily mean just because I'm active, I'm qualified for everything. It depends on which qualifications that they have. And the last thing on the dashboard I want to share that's a really powerful, useful tool are pin searches. So like I mentioned, everybody's going to have their own specific login where you can set some of your own customizations. And one of the handy ones are pin searches, is it allows you to target and track specific volunteers to either report on or communicate with. Like it's common for tracking volunteers who haven't completed certain steps on their onboarding journey, like background checks, trainings, but it could also be used for other things like tracking and thanking volunteers who hit certain achievements, like number of hours. It could even be like scheduling related to help remind those to record hours who were scheduled, or reminders that they have an upcoming shift. And you can make as many of these as you like, and it's specific to the admin login. So you're not going to see other people's specific searches. You're only going to see the ones that you've made yourself. So then that way you're a click away from accessing or communicating with the group of volunteers you want to manage. So in this example here, we'll focus on applicants who haven't completed a background check. So any search we look at, we can first check to see if there's anybody who falls under this criteria. So we have 7 applicants who haven't completed a background check. Then a click of a button, I can remind Donna, Will, Graham, and everybody else, hey, thank you for volunteering. We still need a step completed in submitting your background check. So you would use an email template, as you have an unlimited email template library. It will be personalized to everybody. So on the recipient end, Donna, she would see that email as it's coming from your email. She won't know you're sending it to anyone else. And all responses will follow in everybody's natural email inboxes. So you would just use those pin searches to just be a click away from communicating or reminding a group of volunteers. And I'm going to walk through how that search was made. And it'll help introduce to how this searching and filtering is utilized in the software, because it works the same way whether we're in this sub account view, whether we're in the enterprise, although there's an additional filter with that. If we're like sending an email to a group of volunteers or reporting on a group of profiles ready to export. The first step is always filtering by their status. So in that example there, we checked volunteers who were applicants, and now we're filtering by volunteers who are in the applicant stage. Now we can add as many fields to our criteria, which it can be based on their contact info, what they've signed up for, or other customizations like custom fields, responses to their application questions. But we're looking at background checks, and that's a requirement, which is why it's a qualification. It's required to volunteer. We're filtering applicants who their background check qualification is empty, just means it's not completed. And just know you can stack as many filters as you'd like. We're just going through this simple example here. So here are our same people right here. So that pin search just saved me those additional steps of having to regenerate this once it's saved. Then it's on our dashboard. We're a click away from reminding volunteers to complete a said step. Like another common one is having a pin search of all of your active volunteers right here, which we can check, pull who they are, and now we can just save it and pin it to our dashboard. So we're a click away of sending an email to all of our volunteers. And remember, we're still in a sub account view. We're in the museum department, so it's only going to museum volunteers. It's not going to go to library, parks, or the other departments, sub accounts, locations, and things like that. And then lastly, what I'll share in this sub account view is reporting. So this line graphs where we can run standard or raw data type reports. So we'll just look at hours by like volunteer hours. So whenever we want to run an hours report, it's very simple. We just choose the date range of where we want to pull the hours for. So like last year, and then now it's telling me all of my museum volunteers and their hours that they've attributed during the time frame I selected the last year. So we have their names, the most who contributed at the top, grand totals at the bottom, and it's possible to export this into multiple formats. And remember, this is looking at all volunteer hours in my department only. And I can make it specific by using the same search and filtering criteria that I used beforehand, which you can save a specific search so it can be saved in your saved reports library that you can go back to for any recurring type reports. I appreciate everybody hanging in there with me. I know it's a lot of information to kind of like dive into. So that was kind of a summary of the like the sub account view. And now we're gonna switch views to an enterprise. And this icon right here where it shows these two arrows, it's only going to be visible to those that have access to multiple accounts or the enterprise. It just makes it a convenient way to toggle our views. So now let's go to the enterprise level. And this is our overarching account where we can view all profiles, we can send communications, we can report across all of the departments across the whole account. So like we still have our pin searches, like it's common for enterprise administrators to make pin searches for quick communications to all volunteers, all volunteers in the organization. Like it's perfect for emergency situations. Like you can make a pen search for those who are on the schedule today, but there's inclement weather or some sort of emergency happens, so we can quickly send out a text or an email to everyone. Here's where we can also see there's a volunteer statuses section where we can see a summary of all of our sub accounts, all of our different departments, locations, branches, and how the intake's looking like how many are in the are onboarding accepted, out of which accounts departments. This emergent where it says emergency services, libraries, parks and rec. These are regions, so remember this is a plus only feature to help with grouping and reporting. You can export this to CSV and Excel for further management there. And then going back to the like the hours report, so it works very similarly when we're in an enterprise account. There's nothing really like functionally like different. It's just now we can run reports across multiple departments or accounts. So when we run an hours report right here, now I'm not just looking at the museum hours, I'm looking at all department hours. So when we run a report here, we choose our date range. Here are the totals of all of my volunteers, their hours right here. It's ready for export. The totals are here. And if we want customizations to it, we still have our search and filtering criteria. It's just now there's another layer to it. Now it's possible for me to choose, okay, do I want to view, do I want to report on all the departments, a specific department, a region if we were a plus, and then you can save these reports. So then you have a saved reports library that you can reference later to quickly pull the information you're looking for and then export if needed. And the content, like I mentioned, the custom fields, the application questions, it's recommended these are made at the enterprise level as in this configuration tab, this cogwheel, this is where we can make all of our specific custom fields, qualifications, or different templates we can use. Like you can make templates for volunteer activities or training content like e-learning modules, and then you can place them in your departments or your other locations and branches to work off of and use for. And then I'm going to look at a volunteer profile in here because there's an additional tab on here that's really handy. So right now we're looking at a volunteer profile. There's an additional tab called organizations, which we can see the departments Veronica's involved in. So right now, she's an active volunteer in the museum. She's not in any of the other departments. So like animal services, parks, library, when they log into their department's account, they're not going to see Veronica at all. Only the museum administrators, when they log in, they'll see Veronica's profile. And then let's say she were interested in being involved in another department. Maybe she likes working with animals, so she wants to be involved in the animal services. We can as an enterprise admin, here's where we can move her to the animal services department, and we can have her in as an applicant. So then that way the animal services coordinators will be notified they have a new applicant for them to review their processes, because there's still likely going to be different steps or different trainings involved. And if there's any fields that are the same in both accounts, those will carry over as well. And the administrators in the animal services side, when they see, they're only going to see the animal services related information as they move her along through the process. And Veronica is still using her same login when she's like signing up for shifts, recording her time, or updating her information. And she can toggle views between if she wants to like sign up for animal services opportunities or the museum. Speaking of Veronica, let's actually flip it over to the volunteers view. So I'm signing in to the browser version. Just know, remember, there's an app available on Apple and Android called My Impact Page, and it allows you to pretty much do the same things as you can on the computer version. So first of all, the volunteers experience is always going to be branded, and you're able to like customize the branding by adding your own banner and your own color schemes. And so, there's flexibility. Like there's some enterprises, they have the banners all uniform, where it's the same across each sub account. And or each sub account, each department can have their own branding, just whichever makes the most sense. And then Veronica, when she logs in, if she's involved in multiple departments, she can toggle views if needed. Right away, though, she's able to see a summary of like her hours, her upcoming shifts. She can even subscribe to weekly email reminders in her contact informations tab here. So that way she can be reminded every Saturday for what her upcoming shifts are for the next 2 weeks. So she doesn't have to sign in to see when her next shift is. Optionally, she can sync it to her personal calendar. So Google, iCal, Outlook calendar. Uh, and then other helpful things like social media. She can see what you're sharing on Facebook or X specifically. Uh, Virtual badges. This is a fun feature a lot of organizations like to use to help recognize and reward volunteers who hit certain milestones. So when they log in, they can see an image you've uploaded on here for them to remind what they've achieved being a part of the program. Can also see any important news on this front page. So you can place any specific news. So right now, Veronica's a museum volunteer. She's only seeing museum news. She can see multiple news only if she's involved in multiple departments. And the same goes with these files too. So like these documents, these are universal documents you want volunteers to have quick access to. These could be how-to guides, manuals, handbooks, documents to download, training materials, just anything that makes sense that you want the volunteer to have access to their fingertips without having to reach out to you asking for a specific document. Speaking of training materials, a highly recommended feature to take advantage of when it comes to trainings for volunteers is to take advantage of our e-learning modules. As here is where like a volunteer can, in their training tab, they can see any visible trainings that they can take that you set on the back end. You can choose which trainings you want them to see, or you can keep it all private and you can only share it like through a link, whichever approach makes the most sense. And whichever approach you take, once a volunteer is ready to take a quiz, the content can be in a variety of ways. Like it could be a video, you can just embed like text, images, GIFs, and then they can be quizzed in a multiple choice format, which you can make as many questions as you like. You set what the pass rate is. So then once the volunteer submits the quiz, Then they'll be alerted right away whether they passed or failed. If they did not pass, they'll have to go back, like watch the videos, retake the quiz. And then if they do pass, a handy step that can happen is they can have a qualification step be completed themselves. It's very common for like orientation training. So a volunteer can watch an orientation video, they can pass the quiz, and now they have the orientation qualification, which could be the difference from them to being able to see what they can sign up for uh, in their opportunities calendar. So those e-learning modules are just a powerful way for the volunteer to guide themselves along their journey and finding more roles they can unlock and sign up for as in their calendar view. It's just commonly set up for them to only see volunteer opportunities that they have the requirements for. And then just so you know, not all types of opportunities have to be time bound like this. They can have no set schedule, and in that fashion, the volunteer would just look at it from a list view. But right now, we're looking at it as a calendar view. And before they sign up, they can see a quick summary of what they're signing up for. So that way, they know what they're committing to before they sign up. And as soon as a volunteer signs up, they can be on the schedule right away, or approval can be needed, just whatever makes the most sense for the activity, as they can have their own rules. And once they're on the schedule, a volunteer can record hours in multiple ways. One way, either on the browser or the app, they can select the service that they've done. They can notate the time that they gave. And optionally, you can inquire and ask other questions. So that way you can capture other qualitative or quantitative information for you to report on. So not only can you report on the time that they gave, but what's actually happening within the shifts, like your impact measures. So then that way you can assess what's going really well, where can improvements possibly be made, so you can kind of like truly assess your program. And remember, so this is just one way they can record their time. There's a time clock format as well, where a volunteer can clock in and clock out, in which they'll use their same username and password to log in. Or there's an express version too, where they can scan a QR code and that'll sign them in. They'll clock in and clock out, and they can be asked and inquired questions as well, which you can make as many as you like. And once their time's been recorded, they're able to track their own progress here easily within their portal and their reports tab. They can see what they've done the past year. They can run a report for their own hours. So that way they can see what they've done so far, like this year, for example. Here's everything I've done this year so far as a volunteer. I can export it if needed, save it on my computer. We just try to keep this volunteers portal as simple as possible. We understand not everybody has some are more technology attuned, some are not as much, which is why we allow an easy way for them to reach out to you if they have any questions, if they need any help. There's a contact tab where they can send a quick email to the appropriate manager or administrator, and it'll go right to their email. There's ways for self-help as well. There's help articles showing written step-by-step how to use each part of their personal portal. Some of them come with videos as well. And then, yeah, they're able to update any of their own personal or custom information on here. So that kind of summarizes volunteer impact as a whole. Just remember, in one of the, actually, I don't think I mentioned this, in one of the resources that you'll receive in the coming days is a demonstration of our software that's going to go into more detail of all the different features. There's different playlists that you can like focus on for the features that you're particularly looking for. And then, of course, there's a way you can book time with me so we can have a more personalized demonstration to your needs. But I do recommend watching our online video before meeting with me. So then that way we can address use more time on the specific needs and using the software in that fashion. So a little more about Better Impact. So funny thing with our company, we actually started by a fluke. So our CEO and founder, Tony, had a passion project of building a web-based volunteer management software solution for his local hospice where his mother resided, and that founded the birthings of a global We're Here to Help company. So we've been around for over 20 years now. We might be a small company, but we're all over. We have global impact. We're in North America, we're in Europe, we're in Australia. So we have customers all around the globe. we specialize in volunteer management software, but we now have other components that interface with it relating to donor management, client member solutions. And some of the, if you look at our reviews like on G2 or Trustpilot, some of the top comments that we have are our support and user friendliness side of things. And that just kind of goes back to us being a we're here to help company.